Block Gemara. We are up to Daf Kuv Dalid, Erev Shuas, and we are up to the Mishnah. Now, remember, the Gemara just said to us that there's two kinds of, actually, three, but Gemara focuses on two. You can either be a sharecropper, wherever you work out some kind of arrangement, half, a third, two-thirds, and so on. So you of the yield that you produce, and relative to the yield, that's what you get. And then you have a chayker. A chayker is you give a fixed amount to the owner. Say, look, I'm taking over the field. I promise you every year I'm going to give you X amount of bushels or X amount of wheat, whatever it is. And regardless of the yield, whether it was a bad year or a good year, it's a fixed price, but what you give him is from the field itself. And that is why by Hakira as well, the owner can say to him, I still want you, can control him and tell him how he wants it, because it's at the end of the day, it's still his field.
Can I ask, just on that idea, if the field produces absolutely nothing, does he give nothing, or does he have to go and buy something to give?
The chayker has to go out. Very good. The chayker has to buy. You promise a fixed amount, so you have to go out and you buy whatever it is that you have to give. But if you're an oris, if you're a sharecropper, and that year you have no yield at all, then you're potter. You're exempt. You both potter. So there are two different kinds of arrangements. And the Gemara here, for some reason or other, segues into Iska again, where there's like a mixed arrangement, because it sort of flows on from the idea of a chayker. We'll see. Says the Mishnah. So if you took a field from your friend and you left it lying fallow, you did nothing there. So if the Mishnah is not talking about a chayker, because if you're a chayker, you got to give your fixed amount regardless of what happens to the field. So we're talking about an oris. The oris is supposed to work in the field, but that year we got lazy, did nothing. And the owner said, hey, true, the deal was whatever the yield is, I'll get a certain percentage, but the idea was you're going to work. You didn't anything. So what happens? So we assess that what would the field have produced in the weather conditions and everything else, if he would have done what he had to do, the noisely. And the sharecropper has to pay that to the owner. Because he wrote there in the agreement, if I leave it fallow and I don't work the land, ashalom, I will pay you b'mei tova. I will pay you whatever the value, what I could have gleaned from this land. I mean, it's only fair. So the Gemara starts off saying that it doesn't say here, it doesn't follow all the rules. Tanai kafel. Usually we have to make a condition, positive and negative. If I don't do it, then I'll pay you this, and it does nothing. And the mayor is the one who says that you have to have a Tanai kafel. You have to have all these, 4 different kinds of rules. But here Rabmeir says, Doid is Lashon Hedjit. We know what your intent is. It's so clear that even though you didn't spell it out correctly according to halacha, if you don't work the land, you're going to have to pay. Even though you didn't say clearly, if I don't work the land, I'm going to pay you the full amount. If I do work the land, then what? Yeah, exactly. All that kind of stuff. It wasn't written there. He dashes Lashon Hedjit. When we know exactly what you're trying to say, we'll accept it as if this is what you mean. The time you learn, Mary says, perfect example. You didn't write it correctly. You just wrote like people talk in their vernacular. But we know what you mean. So you have to reimburse the owner. Rabbi Yehuda also Lashon Hedjit. The Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda says, Adam may be carbon ashalish. If a man is rich and a wife is poor, there are certain kabbanas that you bring. It depends on the economic scale, your economic status. If you're rich, you bring a cow, and if you're not so rich, a lamb, and then less, you bring a bird, and the less than that, you bring a flower offering. So if his wife has obligations that she has to pay, not voluntary one, but she has to, like if she was a zova, whatever it is, just bring karbanis. Even if it happened before they got married, the husband has to pay. Why? Why is he obligated to pay as of a rich person? He writes in the Ksubah, the responsibility that I have for even kadma before I met you. So he takes on all these responsibilities, and therefore, therefore, it's the husband who writes that and takes on all the responsibility. He has to pay for it. And Rashi learns exactly the opposite, that it's talking about if he divorces, he doesn't have to pay. But this is the Teishas and others learn the way I just told you. Rashi has a different gear in the Gemara. Because Rashi learns is not talking about the Ksubah, it's talking about the receipt that you give to the Ksubah. Hil hazakin hayadoid lashon hedjit hazakin also. But even though he didn't make the full conditions, we know what your intent is. Hil hazakin also dash lashon hedjit. The Tanya we learned Anshe Alexandria. This is fascinating. The people in Alexandria hayemekachin esnes the same. They got them engaged from Sotera. You're engaged now, right? She's a nation ish. Ubishas knisas lechuppah. That when it came time to get married, they were about to go to the chuppah. Boy nachedim. Others will come in. The chayt for nice man. would seduce them and say, "Come with me, you'll have a better life," and they would steal their wives. In other words, can you imagine? I just try to picture what's going on over there. I guess they saw that you're a prominent person, you're happy to marry this woman, she must be a great woman. So he convinces her somehow or another that she should go with him. Let's not say b'chaytu means literally kidnap. Let's say b'chaytu means he sort of seduces her. They were engaged. So the children of Mamzerim, the nation's issue. If they marry somebody else, the children of Mamzerim. Kedusha, real Kedusha. Amal Hillel Hazakin said, "Hey, let me see the ksuva what they wrote. Hey, when they brought. Now, even we learned sometimes they write ksuva after they get engaged. Sometimes they wait till after they get married. But they brought the ksuva to the mother. Umotza, they found shekosov man. These kids we're talking about now, or the ksuva after they got married. Many years later, the children are growing up and they want to get married, and the rabbi said, "Hey, you're a mamzer. I can't marry you off because your mother was on the way to the chuppah and she was taken by another man." So the Hill said, "Let me see the ksuva that the mother had when they used to write in Alexandria." And it says there, when we get married, have a little into, then you're my wife retrospectively. So even though he didn't make conditional chuppah, then it's retrospective. So no, the kedushin was not really kedushin, but they didn't word it correctly. They didn't make it if you go to chuppah, then there's, and we didn't do that. But because if you don't go to chuppah, then we're not engaged. But because that's what the intention was, it's good enough. Next, Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, which according to some, remember the Agba Rashi tells you whether it's Rabbi Kiva's son or not. Hayadosh also lashon hedjed. The time we learned Rabbi Shua ben Karcha, Hamal was chaveiroi. If you lend your friend money, if you lend your friend money, it comes time to get paid, and the person doesn't have to pay. So the bezdin then seizes a mashkin and gives it to the malva. That mashkin should not be worth more than the actual loan. Should not be worth more than the actual loan. Why? Because this is what he writes. Now, because what they did was, there's no Bava Metzia here. Sorry, outside there's Bava Metzia. So what they did was that the trader says that if you seize a mashkin from somebody and they cannot afford it, and obviously this person can't afford it because it came the due date, they couldn't pay. If they don't have what to pay, you have to give it back to them at night. It's a duck if you give it back at night. But then we say sometimes the guy didn't really need the mashkin, nor is more security, so he would let the guy have it. Have to schlep every night, bring it back, and then in the morning take it back. You can have it for a few weeks. Okay, you can have it for a few weeks. And then they would assess the value of the mashkin, and they would write in the shtar the following. This is what they write. They write in the document. He would write in the shtar. He would write that I'm giving you a mashkin that's worth whatever it's worth. You can collect that mashkin. That's in compensation for the loan that I owe you. If I don't pay you now, if the mashkin is worth $300 and the loan's only for $100. What's going to happen is that if the guy has no money to pay at another time, the malva will keep the mashkin. He'll get paid $300 instead of $100. So make sure that you give a mashkin equal to the value of the loan. Why? That's not the point here. The point is people don't know, and they'll think that's the value of the loan. And the point is that in the shtar, it wasn't written as a legal document with conditions. It just said that this is exactly lashon hedjed. But therefore, but we know your intention is that I don't pay you, keep it. Therefore, be careful. Time of the Kosla Someone ask a question. Time of the Kosla You're telling me the only reason why we're worried is because you wrote that. Well, Rabbi Yechon said, Rabbi Yechon said that regardless of whether you write a document or not, if the person dies, normally the metalton of a person is not meshubah to Baal Chayv. That the portable items you can only collect from the permanent assets. But the Rabbi Yechon says when it comes to a mashkin that we seize, there the children cannot say, "Oh, we inherited metalton, we don't have to pay you." Metalton, it's like an apothecary, that this is where you get paid from, and you cannot. It's different than all other metaltons. So what's the point of writing a shtar in the first? Why would you even write a shtar? If I give you back the mashkin, why would you write a shtar? As if to say, to protect me, that if the guy dies, I can collect it. I can collect it anyway. He says, you know why you write a shtar? Ahani. It helps that what happens. I gave the mashkin back to the borrower, and he uses it and it depreciates. It's no longer worth the amount of my or whatever the loan was. And the chiddush is that if he died, normally let's say the loan was $100, the mashkin was $100, but then the mashkin deteriorated. Now it's worth 75. So now the guy died. Too bad. You have your $75. You cannot collect from the same other metalclid. But in this case, because you wrote it in the star that the mashkin is worth $100, you fix the price. So then, if the guy dies, you can go to the Yosemim and collect the supplement, the difference, because this is like the father already paid it back because it's in the star. Kigovu dummy. That's why you write in the star. So again, we see the idea of writing of Lashon Heged. We take it as if this is halacha. Rabbi Yossi, Hayadaidish, Lashon Heged. Also dash Lashon Heged. The time we learned Rabbi Yossi, in a place where they made a ksuba, milva. What happens is that usually the father of the bride would say that I'm going to give you on holiday, you're going to bring from the home this and that. You promise basically a whole bunch of items that you're going to give, clothing, and you're going to give this and money and all that kind of stuff. But mainly goods, not money, but goods. You give clothing and furniture and all those things. So Rabbi Yossi says if the meaning of the place is to put that into the ksuba and treat it as if it's a document for a loan, that means the father of the bride actually owes this money. And then goive, then the din is goive, you believe it that you can go ahead and you can the chassan has the right to go to the father-in-law and demand take him to it's a loan. You promised clothing and everything else, not stam gedet, it's not waffle, it's a contract because it's treated as a loan and you owe it to me. Now, sometimes they would exaggerate. Some places have a meaning that whatever I exaggerate to make you look at the woman is so special, even though I don't even have that kind of money, I'll say I'll give you $10,000. I can't afford $10,000, but I write it down so we know every place had their own minhagim. So, for example, if the minig is that they double what they're really going to give, then when it comes to go to din Torah and the son-in-law says, "Hey, you owe me money," he can only collect half what's written in the ksuba. So again, even though it's written one thing in the ksuba, we know what the intent is. We know what the intent is. Even though you wrote $100, we know you mean 50. Nahar Beloi, in the place in Nahar Beloi, Govu Tulsa. There they would exaggerate 3 times. I'm going to give 100, you write 300. Mereima Magdi Nami Shvacha. Mereima didn't follow this, and he said, if you wrote 300, pay 300. But Tanya, we learned why are you demanding that you exactly what's written in the contract in the ksuba? We just said if the minig is to exaggerate and write double, you only collect half. It's not a kasha. It depends how far you go. If you actually made a kinyan with the father-in-law promised he's going to give you X amount of clothing and X amount of furniture, and you made a kinyan, then that's it. I don't care what the minhag hamakom is. When you make a kinyan, whatever you write niksuva is right. But if you don't make a kinyan and you write niksuva, then even though we know what your intent is, even though you wrote 500, we know you mean 250. Okay. Says the Gemara, Rabbeinu Mashbach, because Rabbeinu exaggerated because of Lebarte, and he wrote a ksuva for his daughter, and he exaggerated like everybody else did. Amrulei, and we saw before Rabbeinu believes in exaggerations, not like Marema, who was like a tough cookie, literal, exactly. Anyway, so Rabbeinu married off his daughter, and he exaggerated. He'll give a fortune. Amrulei niknim neimar, so whoever the son-in-law was, obviously the Talbot Chacham, said, let's make a kinyan. He said like this: if you want a kinyan, I'm not gonna. Let's go back to really exactly. And but if you want me to write nice things in the ksuba, then no kinyan. And I'll give you what the meaning of makim is half. Augab is a person. He said, a person said to the chassan, right, I'm going to give her 400 zuz for my daughter in the ksuba. Now, the obvious question is, did he mean he'll pay 400 so in the ksuba write 800? Or did he mean write the ksuba 400 and I'm giving only 200? Yeah, but what does it mean when he says give her 400? Giving her 400 sounds like giving her 400, but then he says in the ksuba. So Shalach Rab Acha Breder Avi Lekami Rabashi. Rab Acha asked Rabashi, Arba Meya the Inun Tamni Meya. Did he mean Tamni Meya 800? Or Arba Meya the 400? The Inun Mato, it's really only 200. What do you mean with this? So there's 2 versions of the Gemara. Amar Rabashi said, Chazinan we see. Look at his wording. And again, you see the wording of a hedjit. Because it's not a legal thing. If he said Habule, give him Arba Meya, give her Arba Meya the Inu Tam Meya. If he says give her 400, then if he meant to give her 400. So what should you write next to her? 800. But if he said write 400, then the Inu Masa, what he meant was he'll give 200. So depending if you write or give. That's one version, which Gemara stays with. You can have another version is Ravashi said, Chazina, we see. Amar liksuvasa towards the ksuva, Arba Meyazuza, then towards the ksuva 400, he meant give her 400, so therefore write Inotan Meya. But the Yomer says, Biksuvasa, give her in the ksuva, that he meant write in the ksuva 400, which means only giving 200. Mezuzah in the Moshe 200. Says Gemara, this being so pedantic, we're talking about the vernacular of people, Lashon Hedjed. To be so pedantic to say, liksuvasa, a biksuvasa, that we don't accept that there's a chiluk. Exactly. V'loyi, loishna da'ama liksuvasa, v'loishna da'ama biksuvasa, arba meya zuzah di'inamasa. He meant $400 right in the ksuva, which really is only 200. Ad Amar, unless he says Havulu Stama. He says Stam, give her 400. Doesn't talk about the ksuva. The moment he relates it to the ksuva, he meant the meaning Amakim, that you're right and you're exaggerating as they write. Ahugab is a person, the Kabul Abba Mechavri. There was a person that was Mekabel land from his friend. Omar, he said the following. He said, look, he was an artist. He accepted from his friend. Sharecropper, remember, whatever the sharecropper gets, the other, half, third to 3/4. So it's very important that he has a good yield. And Ahmad, he promised. He said to the landowner, if I leave the land fallow and I don't do anything there, I will give you a guzma, 1,000 zuz. In other words, he was so convinced that he was going to work the land. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. But at the end of the day, he was only able to work 2/3 of the land, and 1/3 of the land he let fallow. He says, Dinu, the dinis, the yoiv, like tlas, meya, vitlasim, vitilsa. He promised that he would reimburse $1,000 if he doesn't do anything. He only did 2/3 of the field, 1/3 of the field, so a third he has to pay. 1/3. Exactly. And don't forget the 33 cents. Rava says, no, this is a classical case of a smachta. And we had before Machlek of Yeshiv Yehuda if a smachta is koina or not koina, and Rava said the halacha is that a smachta is not koina. In other words, he just said it because he was sure that it'll never happen. And if a smachta lekanya, ready Yamar Rava, Maishna Mahaditnan, how is it any different than we just learned before in the Mishnah? Im oivid v'loy abid. If I leave the land fallow and I don't work it, Ashalom meitava, I'll pay you the full value as if I worked it. What's the chiluk? There we say it's not a smachta. We say you have to pay. And why in this case, in Rabbi's case, I'll give you alpha zuzah. You say it's a smachta. So the Gemara says it's very important. Hasam loika gozim. You can tell whether it's a smachta or not if he meant that was he convinced that it'll never happen, or he meant that if it doesn't happen, I'll pay you. And how can you tell if he's lashon guzma? That's one of the ways of telling. 1,000. Who pays $1,000 for that? It's not, the crop is never worth 1,000 zuz ever. So why did he such a high number? Because he's sure it'll never happen. So to placate the person, he said, I'll give you 1,000 things. So it's a smachta in that kanya. In our Mishnah, what is he saying? That if I don't work it, I'll give you whatever the land could have produced if I would have worked it. That's not lashon guzma at all. That's how it is. So that's a deal. You said it's a guzma. It's not a guzma. It's a gozim. I hope now. When you take land and you plant a sesame seed, there's a mile of sudden versus a wheat belt. If you have a wheat field, the mile is that it doesn't really ruin the soil that much. On the other hand, the sudden is you have a certain amount of money you make. It's not that. But if you plant sesames, the yield, the value of the yield in the same shetach of land is far greater. The sudden is that it takes away a lot of the nutrients of the soil. And it's hard to plant again, and you have to leave it fallow much longer to be able to recoup all those nutrients. So what happened was that a person became an artist on the land for sesame seeds, but instead he planted wheat, which he did not follow the contract. And the pastures he would have had to pay if the wheat was worth a lot less than the sesame. He would have to give the balbas as if it was sesame his share. But what happened was of the chita kishumshu. The wheat, that year there was a shortage of wheat in the world, and the value of the wheat now went up, and it was equal to what it would have been had he planted sesame seeds. So what's the shaila here? The shaila is that now it turned out to be a benefit to the balabas because he didn't lose all the nutrients. He could sort of plant straight away again. So this so the sharecropper says to the guy, "You owe me now. I'm going to take a deduct from you because you wanted a sesame seed field." And with the chsaron, and that's, oh, you would have gotten, let's say, half. But now that I've saved you in the field, that revach is not part of the deal. I want that. That's his taina. He can deduct from the share. You get experts who will tell you that that wheat, how much the value of the land is worth. You want to sell it after you had a wheat crop, or sell it after a sesame crop, and that's how you work out the value of the land. Ravashi said that Amri Inchi, people will say, he'll say, 1 second. If you would have followed what I told you, sesame, I would have gotten half the profits. And now, because you made wheat, you want to cut down my profits. And tataina that you save my land. I'd rather save my family than save my land. I need those profits, the 50% profit that you were going to give me, or the 40%, or the whatever, the 30, whatever the range it was. I need those profits to feed my family. And if I lose the land a little bit, no, the land can cope. I can't. So therefore, you have no right. And because that was a deal and you amended without permission, you didn't ask me, you just did it, you have no right to deduct from my share whatever it is that I have to get. Even though beforehand, how you can collect it, and all that. But here, because we had an arrangement and you got your profits, you have no idea, no right. Ha'ugab is a person, the Kabbalah of the Shimshah, a simple story, a person that received the land to plant sesame seeds, Zora Chita, he planted the wheat of the Chita Tfei Mishashmi. Here, the 2 miles in. The wheat, not only you didn't lose the ground so much, but also the wheat became more valuable than sesames. So what I mean, thought to say that that in this case that he should what do you call it? He should deduct somehow or another. In other words, you made up to get sesame, and therefore the profit would have been, let's say, your share of the profit would have been $100. Now he made wheat, and your share of profit is 150, but you were happy with 100, so I should only have to give you the 100, and anything more than that, because wheat now is worth more than sesame, is mine. My good luck. Is that a tiny?
Our contract the whole thing should be mine because I never told you.
That's not tiny, because the fact that we had before, I walk into your field without even permission, and I plant trees, you have to pay me, and so on and so forth. And if you're happy with the trees, then you have to pay the full amount. What right does he have to say that it's all his? What about the fact that the land helped? How does this guy produce? How did the guy produce the wheat? Because of this guy's land. So how can he say that the wheat is worth more and I'm taking all that extra profit? He's the one who provided the land. So obviously he has to divide. Okay, now we move to if you remember, we learned the idea of an iska. We have an investor, a silent partner, an investor, and we have the guy who does the work. And the problem is, if I give it to him as a loan, and then we divide the profits equally, then it's mamash ribus, because you're working for me for nothing, and you pay me back my $100 I gave you as an investment, plus $50 my share of the revach. Can't do that. And if the investor says, okay, it's not a loan, it's my money, I'm taking 100% of all the responsibility, and we're 50-50, which investor is going to do that? What happened? The guy, it's not his money. He doesn't care if he loses, doesn't lose, and he won't put his heart and soul into it. So what do we do to avoid the problem of interest and to make sure that the guy works hard? We do the marshal 50-50. Half of it is there's different ways of doing it, but this is roughly what we do. Half is mine, and half of it is a loan. The half is a loan. I mean, you take responsibility. If there's a loss, you take responsibility for that 50. Reuven lends Hashem money. He's not lending at all. Reuven is an investor. But in order to make sure that he can get half of the profits, how do you do that to overcome the problem of ribis? So this is what you do. Let's say, in fact, they don't do it in those days. They did it not 50-50. They did it 2/3 and a third, which is the way Rashi here learns and others. It was many years later, only 4 years ago, when they started doing these hedgeriskas, where they started to change, 50-50, made all these extra things. So if you have what do you call it? So let's say $100 I'm putting in a business, and you have no money, but you can do all the work. So $50 that is so Shimon's Reuben says Shimon, $50 that is a loan, and therefore it's your achayis. If you lose the loan, you have to pay me back. It's your achayis. And therefore you're entitled to, if you put into business and you make money, half of that 50% is yours. The other $50 is mine. I'm taking a chayis. It's pure pekadon. It's an investment. If you lose it, you have to pay me back, right? And therefore, I'm entitled. If you make any money on it, it was my money all along. If I lose it, it's mine. So I'm entitled to 50% of the profit. I have another problem. But we have another problem. Why are you working for my half? The only reason why you're working for my half and I'm not paying you is because of the loan I gave you on your half. In that ribus itself. So to overcome that, the Gemara gave a few options. One is you pay him a little wage, so then that's why he's working. Another one is that the loss, and this is how the Rishonim didn't talk about, the loss is half and half, but the profit is 2/3 and 1/3. So the labor, Shimon has half the money. If he loses it, he has to pay half. But if there's a revach, Shimon gets 2/3 of the revach. The investor gets only 1/3 of the revach. So why are you working, you Shimon? Why are you working for the investor? Because you're getting more revach. You're working for yourself. You're not working for the investor at all, because you're getting that extra revach, and that's why you work. That's like the wage. The wage is the extra revach. So the hefshit is 50-50. The revach is 2/3 and 1/3. That's how the Gemara learns over here. Okay, so that's the purpose of a heter iska. Nadoi said, "Hi iska, pal gemilva, pal begotten." This iska that half milva have begotten, but about milva nichle leiva nichle malva. They both benefit from it. They both benefit from it, as I just explained to you. Ashta now, the Amarina we say, pal gemilva, the Gemara says, if 50% of that, even though I'm an investor, ultimately, but we want to make a business here, and I want you to buy things and then go to another town and sell it and make a profit, I can go there. That's the whole idea. But the fact of the matter is 50% is yours. That's a loan. So you can do whatever you want. So you buy a mishta by shikra shopper. If you want, you can take and buy beer. It's his money. If it's a real loan, it's a loan. Rabbi says, no. You know why we call it a geschäft? A business. What kind of business is it? We take the money that I let you to buy. No, but why am I giving you 50? That's what he thought. Oh, why am I giving you? Even though it's a ruse, the whole purpose is we have a geschäft, we want to make money, and you're not going to make money. You're going to drink beer, buy beer with it. So I gave it to you to use it to buy schayda and then travel somewhere and sell it elsewhere. Not to buy beer with it. Says and he says that if let's say the person dies, the half that's a loan is a loan. And what do we know that a person dies? If there's no assets there, only metaltlin, the Reuven, the investor, cannot go to Shimon's kids and say, you owe me, your father owes money, because it's a loan. A loan is a loan, whatever the dinim of a loan are, which is metaltlin namashub. Rava said, no, Rava again disagrees. He says, it's an iska. The that's what the geschäft is. The geschäft is as if we made up this, but this is how does Gemara fits in it? I was thinking, well, how does Gemara fit in? Because we were talking about lashon hedget, even though you didn't make a conditional and you didn't write it out the way you're supposed to write it out. That if you die, then the money is mine. Whatever. Put something in writing to protect myself. I didn't do that. I just called it an iska. But we know exactly what you mean when you say iska. It's not really a loan. It's only a way of getting around the ribas problem. So therefore, we treat it as if you wrote it, which is exactly a hemshech of the whole Gemara before about lashon hedget. Others want to say because it says nadoi, and we put it doesn't make sense. It has to be much more teichen, and this seems to me the teichen. But anyway, Amar said Rava, chad iska. If you have one geschäft, let's say you have one geschäft and one business deal. The business deal was you're going to buy two different items, and then you go to another town and sell them. If we write a contract for each item separately, the malva loses out. What do you mean? Let's say the two items. On one item you lost $5. On the other item you made a profit of $15. If we bunch, now remember, the loss is half and half, but the profits, the labor gets 2/3, and the malva gets say Shimon gets 2/3, and Reuben, the investor, gets only 1/3. If you bunch the two together, So then did you put it together? $15 gain, $15 gain, $5 loss. So the pile you put it together. The gain was $10. So he gets a third. He'll get $3.33 profit. But if you treat them separately, so you have a loss of $5, the Malva loses $2.50, half. Then you have a gain of what's called? Sorry, a gain of $15. The Malva then gets $5. 5 minus 2.5, he ends up 2.5. He ends up with less money if you treat it separately. He ends up with 2.5 versus if you put it together, he gets 3.33. So if you have one business deal with two items, so you make two starters, it's a loss to the Malva. Other way around, if you have two same muscle, but you make one star out of it, the labor loses out. Because remember, the labor gets 2/3 of the profit. So if there was 15 and a loss of 5, you treat it as two separate. If you treat it as two separate things, okay, so the labor loses 2.5 from the 5, but he gets 10 out of the 15, and 10 minus 2.5, you'll get 7.5. But if you bunch them together, then there's a gain of 10, and he gets 2/3. He gets 6 2/3. We'll get less. So today's gechash up to the labor. So what you have to do is you have to say if it's one business, it should be one star, and if it's two businesses, it should be 2 stars. Fair is fair. In each one, someone loses something, but at least that's fair. One business should be 1 star, and two businesses should be 2 stars. If somebody has this kind of a deal from his chaver, upasi, let's say I'm the guy who's working very hard, and I need investors, and I go to the investor and I get money from him, and we had this deal. And the first business deal I did, I lost. My idea was keep on buying schayra and sell it. So the first schayra that I bought, I actually made a loss. The market turned, it was a terrible day. I made a loss. I didn't want to tell the guy that I made a loss. We just started and already I made a loss. I kept it secret. And I worked very, very hard on the next one, and I made a profit. So Haman he lost. Then then he worked hard and he recouped the loss, plus there was a profit. He'd never told the investor when he made a loss. He was scared. Now at the end, when he has to sit down and make a cheshbon, can he tell the investor, look, there's profits here, but really there were losses before, so let's put them all together and give it a chachakol. I want you to share with me the loss of the first item. You can't say that because you're supposed to tell me as a partner. You're supposed to tell me what's happening. You didn't tell me you had a loss, and I assumed everything was a gain. So what? He says to him, "Why didn't you tell me? Why did you conceal it from me? For your own benefit." Because how you get more investors? If people find out, Shemaz guy is, he took money from this guy and he lost money straight away. A week later, he already lost the money. So nobody will invest in you. So why didn't you tell me? For your own benefit. So you can't now turn around and make a loss and use the loss against me. That wasn't our arrangement. Again, these are all cases where we didn't spell these things out, but this is self-understood that that's how the business world works. So this continuation of this Lashon Hedjit. Rabbi says, Hani Beit Trei. Now this is very interesting. These two people, the Ovid Iski Bahad Yadodi. There were 3 people involved there. There was an investor, and then there were 2 people and 3 partners, and 2 of the partners would do all the work, and one guy was an investor who invested all the money. And they had a hedge Iski made up of 3 people. The Ravach. And there was profit. They started making profit. Now he said, I'm giving this for a year, let's try this for a year. But they started making profit straight away. And after 6 months, let's share the profits now. Even though we made up in a year, I need money now. Let's divide the profits. This is not the investor. This is one of the managing directors, or the people who manage the other partners who are working hard. If the other guy says no, now we start with $100, now we have $250. We can buy so much more schedule with $250, and we'll make more profits. We generate more profits with more money. It's easier to generate more profits. Let's leave the money in the business. He can stop it because the deal was for a longer term. He said, okay, let's not split the business, but let me give me half the profits at least. He said, let's split the business. Now let's divide the profits. And it's basically saying the same thing as before, but now we're explaining why taka can I be marked. Why should I? If you want only the profits, not taking away the keren, why can't he say let's divide the profits, even though it's not a year yet? So he explains. The profits are tied in with the keren. We need the profits. We need the profits. The Amalei Havli Palga Rebachu Palga Karna. Give me my share of the Revach and the Keren. Amalei Iskel Hadodi Meshubit. No. Everything, all the money is tied up, and it's part of this deal, and therefore you can't take anything out yet. The Amalei says, okay, I'll go a step further. Nifleg Revacha v'Nifla Karna. Give me my share, half my share of the principal, my share of the profits. You're saying you need the money in case of losses. See, I promise you, and if you encounter any losses, I will take some of the money that you gave me and give it back to you. Right now, I need the money desperately. Amalei loy no. Mazla de Beitread. If you can still stop him and say, look, the mazel, every person has mazel. We had in the beginning of Baba Kama. Every person has mazel. And therefore, and the mazel of two people is better than the mazel of one person. And therefore, even if you do nothing, just leaving your money there will help me. But you can't force a shutfik. We'll have a babasa good.
He previously agreed, but now he wants to back out.
But here we agreed for 12 months a term. Then therefore, to be finished whatever it is, then you can't back out. Actually, there's a whole Simon Shulchan that explains when you can back out, when you can't back out of a thing. But the Pasha is just, if we made a deal for a certain period of time, then you have to wait till it's over.